My name is Alex Del Sordo, and I'm with my father, Sam Del Sordo, here at Finish Line Shuttlecraft.
Hey, 20 and race, face!
This is the Rower's Choice Podcast.
All right, so this is Alex Del Sordo with another Rower's Choice Podcast, Zoomcast, whatever we're still calling this thing. CJ recently did an awesome intro, so now you get to see a little bit of Resolute and Sykes in there and splice some stuff. So I have Randy Dam. Now, I pride myself on knowing a lot about junior rowing, and I've known Dallas Jesuit for years. They've had a lot of speed, but I don't know Randy, and that's why he's here today. We're going to talk to Randy about his career in rowing, how he's become the head men's coach of one of the fastest junior boys programs in the entire country, and how he has been managing the coronavirus and managing his professional life outside of coaching. So Randy, thank you for being part of our podcast today.
Well, thank you for inviting me to join you guys. This is awesome.
So listen, I start everyone with the same question. Walk us through from stroke one till today. Like, give me this timeline of your rowing background and how you've gotten to be the head coach of Dallas Jesuit.
All right. I actually have not been able to take many strokes in my career. I did try to be a rower when I first started, but I got into rowing in college. I attended Purdue University starting in 2004, and I probably walked into freshman year of college still pretty small. I think I was about 5'8" and 115 pounds. Yeah. But rowing had always sparked an interest because I had seen it on TV a couple times, and especially 2004, big year for the U.S. team and the U.S. men in the 8. Watched those guys in Athens, and I always thought it was a really awesome sport. And I grew up in Southern Indiana, so there was really no access to the sport in Southern Indiana. But luckily, got into Purdue. Had no idea they had a rowing team until the first week or two on campus. They do a great job trying to get as many walk-ons as possible. I think they normally get, almost a couple hundred kids try out in the beginning.
I gotta stop you. You. I have a bone to pick with you. So I went to Marietta College my first year.
Okay.
Hold on. Wait, Randy. Wait for this. I started freshman year 2004 into 5. So 2005 spring was my first year. And I smoked you every race until the finals at Dadvale's, okay? Dadvale freshman year final, 2005 spring. And my coach, and I talk about this all the time, my coach put clams on our oars, okay? And the Boilermakers came rowing by, and a train honked its damn horn at the end. Were you in that freshman 8 boat at Dadvale's, or were you somewhere else?
Unfortunately, but fortunately, I was not. I was actually in the lightweight, the freshman light 8 that year.
Okay.
That was a friend of mine in the boat, Matt Deal. He was coxswain, but a lot of those freshman guys, I was able to cox my junior and senior year.
Right.
We were together junior senior year, but yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh,
remember that moment?
Oh yeah. I because the coaches did. The coaches came up and told us about it while we were sitting there at the start line, because they were the race in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
We were all so nervous, sitting up there on the school behind the starting blocks, and being freshmen, being there for the very first time, everything is just brand new and kind of intimidating. And we had gone through a pretty big shift actually before Dadville. We actually lost our freshman coach right before the race, and the head coach and some of the assistants ended up taking over the freshman and novice squads. And so, yeah, it was a very it was a time period of a lot of unknowns, right? We were very uncertain about a lot of things. I do very vividly remember hearing that the freshman 8 won, and that we were up next, and we were, the coaches gave us a little bit of pressure, but it was also, right, a little bit of motivation, because it was awesome.
How did you do? So how did your boat end that piece?
I believe we ended up medaling. I think we got third place.
Nice.
Third,
All right.
yeah. And yeah, we were pretty excited about that because we weren't, as novice rowing goes, we weren't that great. Outside of that top freshman 8, it kind of trickled off pretty quickly.
I can imagine. So then you do your whole career at Purdue. So all 4 years
Yes,
as a coxswain.
Yep, all 4 years as a coxswain. I ended up putting on a little bit more height, a little more weight. But I just quickly realized, and especially after talking to some of the guys and some of the coaches, it wasn't a big influence from the coaches. I think they would have supported me if I wanted to try to row. But I grew to 5'11" and went up to almost 140, 145 pounds within that first winter season. And but I realized, if I ever wanted a shot at making a varsity 8 one day, I definitely wasn't going to make it as an oarsman because I was still pretty undersized compared to a lot of the guys on the team. And I did my best to keep my weight as low as possible, and I just worked on the coxswain skills to try to make the top boat.
So then what happens after college? What do you do?
After college, I graduated and moved to Dallas, Texas. I didn't even stick with rowing at first. I started working privately with an individual who was an entrepreneur, did a lot of different businesses, worked as an executive assistant, and I just missed rowing after a year or two. The office life, working 6-7 days a week for this guy, it just took a beating after a year or two, and realized I really missed rowing, and started Googling rowing in Dallas, and there wasn't a heck of a lot, but found Dallas Rowing Club, which was out at Bachman Lake, and found White Rock Boathouse, which was out at White Rock Lake, and visited both, and just started trying to figure out how to row on my own as a master, as a former coxswain, in a bunch of Moss boats, Moss arrows.
Wow.
Yeah. And
this is, I'm trying to get the timeline. So you graduated around me, 2008, right?
Yep.
So this is 2010, 11, you're getting back into the Masters circuit.
Yeah, about 2010, 2011, just started, erging and rowing again in singles. And I actually met a gentleman named Ryan White one day, was out on a practice on my own. I believe he was leading a junior practice. Yep. And he saw me rowing, saw that I was a young guy, and he had just helped start, I think, the White Rock Junior rowing program. It was a relatively, still is, very young boathouse, very, very young program. I think he was the first head coach and program director back in that time frame. And he needed help. I think he had like 20, 30 guys and girls, novice and varsity, all mixed together. I think he was one of the only coaches, and just asked if I'd be interested in helping out with coaching. Got really excited at the thought of being a part of a team again, and just jumped on the opportunity, and just really haven't looked back from that point.
Now, were you still working somewhere else and doing, so what happened there? So those couple of years, what were you doing professionally?
Yeah. So professionally, I was working for a gentleman, strictly, he had a lot of different businesses in the medical field, with like storage, what do you call them? Like storage units, and things like that. He was in, property, real estate, owned rental properties. One of the big things I helped him with, and one of my main jobs that I started off with, was actually with his suit business. And I got into, men's formal wear.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he had a big chain of stores in DFW. And I helped to, just do administrative stuff, reports for him. And I was helping to try to develop e-commerce for them.
Wow.
They weren't really online. They weren't on Facebook at that time frame. And so, it was all brand new to me too. But he put a lot of faith in me to try to help him figure out how to build a website, build, e-commerce sales for him and the company. And then I slowly, as as assistants go, you kind of get thrown into everything else that's happening within his life. And after about, I think, a year and a half, 2 years, I had got back into rowing, and I decided to branch away because the hours didn't really lend itself to allow staying with rowing, I guess,
Sure.
like,
Yeah, of course.
a lot of times you're in around like 8 or 9 a.m. and you just kind of go until they say stop. And you work Saturdays, sometimes you work on Sundays. And so, yeah, I branched away, and I actually tried to start up my own business in the suit world with the experience that I learned. And working for a suit company, I quickly figured out, man, how much inventory actually costs and where it all comes from. And both my parents are Chinese. I was born here in the States, but I learned how to speak Chinese growing up, and during some of my time working for this gentleman, I helped with talking to some of the suppliers and factories that we purchased from.
Wow.
Over in China. And so, I started to try to figure out how to do a lot of that stuff myself. And with some help from my parents, we went to China, visited some factories on our own. And in that couple years after I started working for him, I tried to branch out on my own and sell, formal wear, business wear, suits online.
This is insane. Okay. So like, how far did that business go? What happened to that?
It took up a lot of time. I really enjoyed it. I worked with a few colleges. That was a big idea I had whenever I first worked for the gentleman. I tried to pitch the idea of trying to reach out to, college campuses and kids. I was still very young at that point, and, really related back to that college age, and guys buying their first suits, going to their first interviews, trying to get their first jobs. And so, I tried to reach out to a lot of universities around Texas, and try to pitch the idea of, really affordable suits to college age demographic. And
so whatever happened to this thing? Whatever happened to it?
I realized I had two passions. I was trying to work this high volume sales game, and trying to travel a lot and visit college campuses, and traveling to China to try to, buy more inventory, work on quality control. And I was also trying to balance this reignited passion I had for rowing and coaching. And so I tried to balance the two for, 2 to 3 years, and realized, man, I really, really enjoy coaching. And that was way more fulfilling than doing business on my own. And so, there came a point right before I was able to interview for the Jesuit position that I had to make a choice of in full time to rowing, instead of just being, just a part-time coach.
Wow. So, sometimes it takes men or women decades to figure out, if not their whole lives, like what they're passionate about and like what they really buy into. And I'll tell you, like, I'm going to relate this story to me. Like, I started Finish Line 8 years ago, and you have this balance of, like, I love coaching, and CJ and all the guys here at Rower's Choice will tell you, like, I would rather coach a crew right now than anything in the world. Like, I love being on the water. I love watching kids get better. I love going to regattas, and, like, if we rent boats out to teams, they come to me and they talk to me, and I rig the boats for them, and I give them advice. And lucky enough for you, you found that passion, right? You made the decision to say, like, okay, okay, you could make $1 million doing your suit business, but you said, I want to be a coach. And I think what's great, and this is a compliment to you, is that when your athletes know that about you, and they know that you have that much passion, they pull harder for you. They win races. You build a better community around your program. So that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
But is coaching all you do, or do you have something else that brings in home the bacon?
Well, at Jesuit right now, I was fortunate enough to be hired on as a full-time faculty member.
Wow.
The first year they allowed me to kind of ease into things and focus on coaching and maybe doing some substitution work.
Yep.
And starting my second year, I began teaching and finally being able to use my degree a little bit with political science. And I am teaching U.S. government at Jesuit.
That's, it's rare. Dallas Jesuit is a private academy, right? Private school.
Yes, sir.
So you don't need a teaching degree to do this, right?
No, do not need a teaching degree. But there are many well-qualified, PhD and master level teachers, master degree level teachers that I work with, and they're very, very smart. And so I take all my cues and I've been trying to learn as much as I can from all of them. But
That's
yeah,
great.
teaching is a very nerve-wracking thing. I had not been nervous about doing a job like that in a long time. Never had the same nerves that I had getting in front of a classroom for the very first time. As I had, last week.
How big are your classes? Like how many students?
Typically classes range around maybe 15 to 20 at the most. It's a senior level class, so you get some pretty mature guys in there.
How many of your students row for you?
Over the last 2 years, I believe I've only been able to get one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, only one. Yeah, only one. So there are 3 other government teachers, and it is offered in the summertime. The really cool thing about the guys on the team, they work really hard, and in the summertime, if they don't go away for training, a lot of them stay in town and they'll do summer school. And we try to work a 2-a-day training schedule around their summer school time. And so, the past 2 summers, we've hosted, I think, practices from, 7 to 8:30 or 7 to 9 at the lake. They'll go to school, be able to shower and eat a little bit at school, go to class for 3 or 4 hours, and then they'll erg at school or lift at school in the afternoon and, go home, have dinner, sleep, rinse, repeat.
So it seems like Dallas Jesuit really supports the rowing program. Is that a fair thing to say?
Oh yeah. Ever since, the experience I've had with Jesuit was when Coach John Fife had taken over previously before me, and he was there for 7 years. But ever since he got there, Jesuit has been a major power, I think, in rowing, and a big part of that is the administration and the athletic department and the amount of support that they put into the program. Fife
is a Philly guy. I mean, I've known him for damn near a decade. He St. Joe's Prep alum. He's there now. How much? Be honest. All right. Be honest when I ask this question. How much rivalry is there between Jesuit and the Prep? Because you guys are pretty much equal speeds here. Is there some battling going on right now with those 2 programs?
Always. Personally, between John and I, he's actually been a huge mentor for me on a personal level. Ever since I first started out with coaching, I think I was around 24 years old. He has always been a guy that I could go to and ask questions about, and he, being a Philly guy, he's always very honest, and full credit, I think, goes to him and the amount of support he's given me.
Does he still support you now? I mean, is he?
Yeah.
So that's what I love about this sport. Let me interrupt. So very rarely do you see in other sports where a coach leaves and they try to help that team out again, right? Because we're a very loving, supportive community in rowing. This is not. It's in some cases it's cutthroat, but it's really uplifting, and hat goes off to John Fife for this, to still support Dallas Jesuit and you as a young coach. I mean, the guy has been around for a long, long time, and he's won a lot of races. How often would you say you guys talk?
Daily.
Daily?
I think
Wow.
daily. Sometimes 3, 4, 5 times a day. 3 years into working at Jesuit. It's my first position I've had outside of the club world, and so working for a scholastic program and trying to build a scholastic team in the middle of Texas, where the next closest, I guess, scholastic sweep team isn't for a 2-day drive, right?
Wow.
Or
Yeah.
5-6 hour flight. It's very difficult, and he was very successful doing it during his 7-year tenure at Jesuit. So I'm constantly asking him advice, bouncing ideas off of him. Whether it comes to training or building the right racing schedule. I think he has a huge part in our success, even to this day.
So are there other coaches that you communicate with, or is he sort of just like the guy that you go to for advice and direction?
I in terms of daily operations and just my own personal development, I think a lot of credit goes directly to him. But I always reach out, especially in big moments, to my former college coach as well, Dave Cusick at Purdue.
Oh, yeah, and another legend. I mean, the guy knows his stuff.
Yeah.
Now, so what's interesting, what we're learning and what we're finding is that there's a lot of young coaches that don't know who to go to for advice and direction, right? You're lucky enough that you have Dave Cusick and John Fife. Like, those are rare coaches that want to support and help you, and they're good. They're very successful, right? They've built programs. They've found speed at all levels, high school and college. But what we're finding is that not a lot of young coaches know who to go to. Is it challenging to, how do I say this? Is it challenging to be on your own sometimes? Like, do you feel like you're in a little bubble, or is it really easy for you just to get the best advice from these guys?
Getting outside of the bubble is kind of just talking to those two guys. In Dallas, there really isn't. It's not like being out on the coasts. It's not like being in California. It's not like being in the Philadelphia area, in the Boston area. Rowing isn't as big here in Texas as it is in some of those other coastal states. So one of the big reasons why I think we've been developing is because, like you brought up before, we've had a lot of school support and one of the big school or areas that the school supports us in is traveling, and being able to bring teams out to California, Sacramento, San Diego, to be able to travel, to compete in the Flicks and in a St. Andrews Invite race. Being able to compete in Stotesbury, right, and being able to compete at youth nationals. I think all of that over the years has really built up the program outside of the scope of just Texas rowing.
Well, this is a good transition because you can't go anywhere, right? I mean, COVID-19 has stopped you. Tell me how you've navigated this situation and supporting your athletes.
Well, it's been tough, and honestly, at times I feel like I haven't done enough. Because I can see that at times motivation is down. Guys have a pretty honest relationship with me, I think, and a lot of guys have reached out over the last week or two, especially after U.S. Rowing announced that they were going to cancel regionals and youth nats, and then Stotesbury and Henley announced that they were canceling on the same day as well. Guys' motivations really plummeted, and it's been individual conversations. I think trying to reach out and either through email or texts or just picking up a phone and talking to an individual. I try to frame the long-term perspective and long-term opportunities of each athlete for them. A lot of juniors I've spoken to, especially, and put a lot of importance on this time period to them, because, colleges were obviously canceled way before junior rowing. So a lot of college coaches, without much more responsibility right now to do, they've been hitting the recruitment pavement quite heavily. And And actually, I was lucky enough to speak with a college coach right before we got on the phone call, and they said this is a very interesting time frame because this is a great equalizer. You can really see who is very self-motivated and who is really reliant on a team or a coach, and others around them to get working. And so this is a really unique opportunity to see who the self-driven, self-motivated people are. And you better believe I'm going to get on the phone and relay that message to a lot of the junior and sophomore class guys today.
Well, you have, as of this morning, which we will announce later, you posted the third fastest time for the junior men's in our national championship. Now, let's talk about that for a minute, because you clearly have some motivated guys. Who are the four guys on that team in the A boat?
The four guys that we have in the A group right now, starting with the two seniors, we have Ryan Boyle.
Mm-hmm.
He will be attending Dartmouth next year. And we have Ben Gross, who is a senior. He's a little more on the light side, but we're unsure yet where he will be attending next year. I think he was talking to Syracuse and looking at a couple other universities that are not rowing related. And then on the junior side, we have two very bright individuals, very hardworking guys. First is Michael Curry. He, I think, went 6'19" at Sweat in February. And then we have, a recent transfer student that came to us named Nick Knapp, and I think he went 6'18" at Sweat.
6'18".
Yeah.
You got some big boys. What's your secret, man? What's your secret? What are you doing? How you getting these kids to be pulling these splits, man? I'm all ears. So tell me.
I'm not sure if there's any big secret. I think I've just learned from the previous 8 or 9 years of mistakes that I've committed as a very young coach. I learned very early on that I was able to create good erg scores. One of the first guys I actually coached is an assistant coach with me this year. His name's Eli Brown. He attended Brown University. But that very first team I coached, first couple of years I coached, I didn't really know a hell of a lot. But I was able to help create a really hard-working environment. And he went 6'13", I think, when he was in high school by his senior year. And 6'13", I think, in 2014 was a pretty quick time.
That's a very quick time. Yeah.
So
I'm not letting you go here. You got to give me what's your secret erg workout? What's just give me something here. All right. Tell me, what do you do?
I think there's a lot to creating the right environment for not just, one or two individuals to do well, but for an entire team to do well. This year alone, we've focused not a lot on results. We've focused a lot more on work ethic on a daily basis. We've emphasized attitude a lot. I would say that's a daily thing as well. And we focused on relationships. One thing that I quickly saw whenever I first came into Jesuit was that we didn't have the greatest of relationships as teammates. And sometimes guys would just maybe take joking a little too far, right? Maybe they would, poke and prod each other a little too much if they had a bad day on the ergs, or a bad practice on the water. So we just try to maintain those three things. Just work as hard as you can on any given day, and just realizing that people will go through different things in life at different times. Sometimes guys have nothing going on at school and it's an easy week, and sometimes you got 4 or 5 exams, right? And essays and other things that keep you up and don't allow you to get a lot of sleep. You're probably not hydrating well. And so your performance kind of drops a little bit. And so we just emphasize effort on a daily basis, trying to maintain positive attitudes and positive relationships with each other, and just positive encouragement. And that's really it. Honestly, that's really it. And trying to stay accountable to that on a daily basis.
Unlike a lot of coaches that I've talked to, you do a good job of identifying when to drive and when to pull back, right? You can see within your group that it's really important to not create anxiety or pressures that and I haven't heard a lot of coaches really in my time say that they don't emphasize on the results, they emphasize on the effort. So like if you are having a bad day, your girlfriend dumped you or you had 5 exams, you're
Yeah.
not going to go very well like today, but you're as long as you give everything you can, that's that's wonderful. So I want to I want to transition a little bit because we're the same age, right? We're the same age. And yesterday I talked to Chris at Capital Crew.
Yeah.
And yeah. You know where this is going. So, he loves trash talking you, man. And he loves like just getting under your skin here. But what I want to talk about is your feelings and thoughts on coaching camaraderies, your thought on relationships with other coaches. Like, I know we're all competing with one another, but really we're all there for the same thing. We're there for mentoring and advising young athletes. Do you think this sport's missing that camaraderie among coaches? And if so, what do you think we should do moving forward?
In my experience, which is I guess very limited to Purdue and Texas, I don't feel like it's lacking camaraderie. I feel like people are pretty open about as long as you ask. When for instance, like when Coach Dave O'Neill first took over UT, University of Texas, I made an emphasis to try to ask to get out in the launch as many times as possible and to ask questions and to be able to just view what it's like to build a program up into a national contender. And I have found it pretty easy to approach coaches and ask questions about things.
How about the other side of the coin, like getting beers, going out to dinners, hanging out, spending time with one another? Like, because we all share the same passion, we share the same interests. I know that you're kind of in a bubble in Texas, but I mean, do you have that opportunity to get around?
We travel. I make it a point to try to invite people out for a dinner. I know it's tough sometimes if we're at a big regatta, and we have our own teams to take care of and feed and things like that. But every time I travel, I try to reach out to a couple coaches to see if they want to grab a beer or grab dinner.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that. So if I'm at a regatta, I mean,
absolutely.
we're gonna have that beer, and we're going to talk about Marietta rowing and Purdue rowing because I'm still bitter about that. I can't get that you don't lose that one loss that you had. It sticks to you like glue, right?
Oh.
But I want to end this with some trash talking. I think it's really important. I think CJ is going to confirm for me that you have advanced to the top 16. I think you did. What do you want to say to the guys, to the other programs out there that you're about to go up against? Because in about an hour, I'm going to do a recap of this round, and I'm going to talk about you and your boys. Okay. So what do you think? I mean, do you got what it takes to go all the way?
Yeah, I do feel like we have an opportunity to be able to push it into the finals and have a good shot at the final 2K. I think it'll be very challenging, especially hearing that we were beaten and did not have the fastest 2,500 average. You can tell that there's a lot more speed on the table from a lot of other teams. It's a little out of character for me to talk a lot of trash. So I respect a lot of the other teams and a lot of the other athletes.
Yeah. You tend to keep things close to the chest. I get it. But I'll say what's happening next in the next 2 rounds, which I'm confident that you'll do well in. It will really disrupt what your 2K is in a week and a half. Like this next one's like 63 or 6,400 meters. I'm going to do mine tomorrow, even though I lost. I'm still bitter about that. I lost this round. But that is going to be the differentiator between everybody else, right? That is going to set the bar for the 2K times. I think you're going to be surprised. We are too with the results. How have you, and this is a plug for us because I don't always, I love talking to coaches, but I have an ego myself. So how has this competition been adopted by your program? Have you guys enjoyed it? Have the athletes enjoyed it? Has it made an impact on them in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think we've. This competition itself for us has definitely helped to keep a lot of the guys motivated. So I think it's big. It's been a big saving grace. I think the idea of doing such a unique tournament style with all these different length of racing, and not just 2,000-meter racing, has definitely sparked the interest of the guys, and to be able to talk to some of them about the importance of some of these different distances, right, and what it actually means. To be able to race the 4-miler, right, to be able to race the 1,500, be able to race the Henley distance, talking to them about these different races. And we don't do that on a normal basis a lot, right? We don't talk about what these different races mean to rowing.
But Ted Nash, Ted Nash didn't come up with the 2,500 meter, but it was the original crash feed distance. And it was I did it in college. It was what we measured ourselves by. I did 1 2K at GW, and I did 3 at Marietta, right? All the times were 2,500 meters. Yeah. It's a different beast. And I'll tell you, I know that if we polled every junior athlete, maybe 5% would even know who Ted Nash is. And I really want them to know and appreciate the history of our sport, because it's near and dear to my heart. Randy, I take notes in all of these, and there are a couple things that really stick out to me in this conversation, and I like to kind of recap at the end here. You were 115 pounds soaking wet, and you come into Purdue, and you just hey, I'm gonna do it, and you medal at Dad Vales, and you liked rowing because it hit you at the right time. You watched the Olympic gold medal winning crew that impacted rowers forever, in the U.S. And you just happened to be at that time to watch that. I remember too. I'll never forget the day I watched that race. I was in Ohio watching that race.
Oh man!
Screen with a bunch of other rowers, and I this is the greatest moment for me ever. It was incredible. And then you had this roundabout way of finding rowing again. I love that you started a business, and I love that you have a mentor in John Fife who now you still communicate to. It's absolutely wonderful. And you got a really good story. And I think a lot of coaches that listen to this are going to say, you know what, I can be like that. I can find my way back to rowing again, maybe get them motivated again if they've been away for a couple of years. But there's one thing that we also do now is we name the podcasts. And I'm going to call this one, I started Googling rowing, because that's hilarious. You said to me after about 2 years, and you missed it, you said, I just started Googling rowing. For a guy who won a Dad Vale gold medal, I wouldn't think you would need to Google rowing, but I love it.
Well, there was not, when I moved to Texas, when I moved to Dallas, I moved into a place where I had no idea that there was even water in Dallas for a year. Right. There were lakes and big lakes actually all around the DFW area, and so when you get into this, sometimes you get so busy you just live in a bubble. You don't go outside that bubble, and that's what it was like for a year or two. And so
well, I think the rowing world appreciates you being back in it, and I wish you all the luck at Dallas Jesuit. And we'll be talking about your crew over the next couple of days and the next couple of weeks as we watch you go and move in advance. So everyone, thank you for tuning in to the Rower's Choice podcast. Thank you, Randy Dan, for being here with us today. More from us and other coaches in the NCAA style bracket that we are hosting. Thanks for watching.
All right, thanks, guys.
Cool.